Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Green Room. I think if you have been on this planet or in this solar system anywhere in the last 20 to 25 years, you recognize that intro music today from Phantom of the Opera. And two of my guests have been very closely involved with that show for quite some time. And we're going to bring them on in just a second. We're doing another installment of a theater couples edition of Beyond the Green Room today. And we have four old friends. They know each other well. I know them. And so without further ado, please welcome the couple that was very involved with Phantom of the Opera, Ken Kantor and Andrew Glant-Linden.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Hello. Yeah, I love your library around you. I'm feeling like you'll have the answer to our quiz question before anybody else will. Just turn around. So I know you guys are anxious to see our other couple. I want to bring them on immediately. They are a couple of wonderful actors that I've worked with many times as either a director or a fellow actor. And they know these gentlemen very well too. So it's going to be Old Home Week today. Please welcome David Sitler and Carolyn Popp.
Yay.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hey, we missed you.
Miss you too.
Couldn't take that back.
Well, that's what this show is all about too. We all get to visit. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I was telling people that I ran out of, after the broadcast was over. I was so used to seeing my friends' faces maskless that I ran out of the front door of my apartment to get the mail, and I didn't put my mask on. I had to run all the way back and put it on. You know, we kind of go into the world that we will be back in before too terribly long. So thank you all for joining us today. What if you've never seen the show before, I will tell you that this is what we do to get the ball rolling a little bit. It's my own ego trip into the world of Beyond the Green Room. And I ask one degree of David Edwards, how do we first know each other? Where do we first meet? And the answer that I may have is not the answer that you have. It's not really fair to ask Ken. So but I'll ask the two of you at once because I know Ken and I have probably never been in the same room together yet. So we are today.
Yes, virtually.
So Andrew, you take it away.
Sure. Well, David, you and I met back, I think it was like 2007 when you were playing John Adams for me in a production of 1776 that I directed. I think that's the first time that we met.
Yeah.
Is that your memory of it?
Yeah, and actually, we almost met earlier because I think you were going to direct a Camelot there at the same theater.
Yes.
And I think it was a family emergency.
At the last minute, I had to drop out. You were supposed to play Arthur in that.
Yep. And the producer called me and I at the last minute, and I was terrified that he was going to ask me not only to play Arthur, but to direct it as well.
Oh my God.
And which would have been frightening, but actually not as frightening as the alternative that we had. We had a director who was not the easiest journey for all of us, but it ended up working out very well. So I missed working with you that time, but we finally got to do it with 1770.
That's right. I'm so sorry that I had to drop out because Camelot is one of the shows I really love to do. Actually,
it's been a perennial of mine. I've played Arthur, I think, 3 times, and Lancelot, and but. It's a problematic show.
Yes.
And the director who did direct it that time tried to fix all those problems in 1 week stock. And if Alan J. Lerner couldn't fix them in the 50 years after the show premiered, it was...
Well, we had a great time doing 1776 together, right?
We did. And I actually have a little surprise for you later on those lines. But before we go any further, I think that Carolyn and David are going to have a plethora of information about how we first met. So why don't you give us the rundown, you guys?
Well, David actually met you first.
But you can go first, I would say.
Well, yes, I do have a tale to tell. Yes, I had met you through the show that you had met David in. However, the next time I worked, the first time I worked with you and met you was when I was brought in after you had rehearsed the ensemble for a full week singing Bloody Mary, and then I showed up and got plugged in as Bloody Mary to a fully rehearsed group of young, very energetic men. And thank God I knew the words. I knew my music, I knew the words. I think that was almost 2 hours on my feet of going. And I remember, and I really didn't know you very well, and I remember looking at one of the other younger actors, and they looked at me and they said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm just overwhelmed right now. This is really, all you guys know every step, everything." But that was the most incredible plug-in I have ever done. However, as you and I agreed at the end of that show, we found our Bloody Mary, because I was not going to be playing the regular type of Bloody Mary, clearly. And we found her, and I've been grateful for it ever since, because that was my best experience.
I'm grateful for it too. It's one of my favorite shows, and another perennial. I more recently did it at Ivoryton, and that was an equally lovely experience. But you know, when you think of an actor to cast as Bloody Mary, somehow you know you didn't come to mind, but you did a magnificent job, and
it was part of the track.
Yeah,
and that
you know,
was part of the issue.
We had a lot of obstacles in our way there too, because it was the first show of the season, and we did rehearse for a few days, and then everybody disappeared to do a gala, and I couldn't rehearse with my cast. So I went back to New York for 3 days rather than sit there and chew my nails and worry. And but you were magnificent, and I remember one aspect of it we couldn't solve, and you worked so hard at trying to figure it out. And I really, from the word go, I admired your tremendous work ethic and your devotion to the production. And I'm so glad that we got to work together many times since. Well, David, you probably have a
actually,
story, I think.
Boxer shorts come to mind in a bathrobe. We were up at the downstairs Cabaret Theater in Rochester, and I think we were both. I was already doing a play there in The Belly of the Beast, and then I was cast, and you were coming into the show as well as a new cast member, and we were in housing together. And I remember you teaching me how to soft shoe and tap.
I bet that's a surprise to you, Andrew, to hear that David was doing a tap number. Yes.
Yes. You were very helpful. Yes, but I remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shorts for some reason. I'm not sure. Can't get that image on there.
Well, I know I said nothing is off limits, but I think maybe we should. Our toe is on the line already there.
Okay.
No, it was a show called That's Life that I had been doing off-Broadway in New York. I knew all 3 of the male roles, and 2 people were dropping out of this Rochester production. And through some ingenious, jigsaw puzzle, they figured out that David, who was magnificent in this one-man show in The Belly of the Beast, could suddenly switch over to musical comedy and play this, what we call a Jewsical, up there in, it was about contemporary Jewish life in New York, a lovely show. And I trained him in the role that I was doing that week, and then switched over to another role. And I don't know whether you had done much singing and certainly dancing on the stage, but you were very game. And it was a complete polar opposite to your wonderful performance in The Belly of the Beast. And we somehow got through it. And
it was funny because on Fridays I would do, Saturdays we would do That's Life, then I would do In the Belly of the Beast, and I'd do That's Life. We'd be like 3 performances in one night. But the one, That's Life just kind of, it was such the total opposite of In the Belly of the Beast that it kind of just, you were tired at the end of it, but we got through it.
You got to rest your brain a little bit in
very much, yeah, very different kind of thing.
Very intense performance you gave in that show, and I know you've done it elsewhere. It's been a great success for you. So, but we've done a lot of things together since then too.
Yes, we have. Yes, we did the Singing in the Rain down in Florida. We shared a dressing room down a trailer down there.
Yes. And Rumors, you were in the production of Rumors that I directed.
Yeah.
And Carolyn, we did The Cripple of Anishman together.
Yes.
And
that was great. You were wonderful in that.
Well, so were you.
I loved when you directed me in Last of the Red Hot Lovers.
I was going to say that was my favorite because you really were.
You had that moment for that horrible, well, it's not a bad monologue, but it's one of those slit your wrist monologues. And when you and I had that moment of working out, that she just says the monologue starts undressing, like she's going to go ahead and do it. And the audience reaction every night was, oh, she's going to do it. She's going to do it. The audience reaction to that, solving that little problem, was still that was a great moment. It was
very, I think we had a total of maybe 12 hours to rehearse that play that week too. So, but I once again, whenever I've worked with either one of you, I have really admired your sense of commitment and professionalism, and you work very, very hard, and the results show not only in your talent but in your commitments. And Andrew, I had heard such wonderful things about you from Carolyn as a director that's why I was looking forward to working with you too.
Thank you, Carolyn.
What have you guys done together?
We met back in 2001, the summer of 2001, in the production of 110 in the Shade. Carolyn played Lizzie, and it was a different production of the show in that we eliminated the entire ensemble. It was just these 7 principals. And so it really became a play with music more than a musical. And we had a good time together, right?
That's one of that production's one of the highlights for me. It got put back in the house where it belongs. Yep. I still to this day say Lizzie would not do that in the back of a wagon.
Yep.
And Andrew gave me the great direction of, don't shy away from Starbuck and Lizzie enjoying themselves sexually as far as they're both willing to go. It's not a romantic comedy.
Right.
It's a truthful telling of people coming to realize who they are.
And the thing is, David, that we didn't know each other before that show, and as a matter of fact, I didn't even cast that show. That show was cast for me because of the circumstances. That's just the way the theater worked. They cast.
You're preaching to the choir there. I know it very well.
Right. So,
it's like opening a box of candy. You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly. The first day or two, you start feeling each other out. How do you work? How do I work? Can we work together? It's part of the given.
Yeah.
And luckily, it really worked out very, very well. And I cast Carolyn 2 more times in 2 other shows. We've done I Do together, and we did a production of Cabaret in Atlantic City together, where she played Fräulein Kost, the prostitute, and she was wonderful in that, absolutely wonderful.
But you didn't think I could do it at first.
No, I didn't. You had to prove it to me.
I was always the good girl, so I had to prove it.
Nobody thought you would do Bloody Mary either, so that's a tribute to your versatility. Ken, I have to say, I realize now that we may not have worked together, but we did share somewhat of a legacy. You played El Gallo off-Broadway for a while, did you not?
That's good. Yeah, down at Sullivan Street.
Yes, and I was the last El Gallo on Sullivan Street.
Oh, no kidding.
I closed the show, yes.
That's usually a privilege that's reserved for me. I've closed more shows than you can imagine.
You know what? That's funny that you should say that, because it takes the heat off me, because I've closed more theaters than. In fact, it looks like we lost another one this last month. We lost Westchester Broadway Theater, where I've done 13 shows.
Wow.
But yeah, I actually I had been doing El Gallo for about 3 years on and off. I would come and go, as we often did with a show like that, and I thought it was going to be there forever. And I was doing what was Andrew Lloyd Webber's shortest running Broadway musical when I got the call to come in and finish the run. And I wasn't sure I could do it, but it looked like we were going to close. So I literally closed Andrew Lloyd Webber's shortest running Broadway musical and the world's longest running musical within 2 weeks of each other. So I think, if you want to close your show, here's my phone number. So I think we all feel that way, the fabulous invalid, especially right now. But I don't know how you guys have been feeling, but I'm very encouraged by the way some of these theaters have been forging ahead and doing virtual productions and the ingenuity at hand, because we have a platform like this. It's sort of wonderful. We don't know what we're going to find on the other side, but I think I'm very encouraged by what we're doing right now.
Very to see what the shape of future Broadway productions is going to be like once Broadway has reopened. Whither the big musical, and I think we're going to wind up getting a lot smarter, smaller shows on Broadway, and I think that's all for the good. I think that the big shows have a tendency to be a little elephantine, and I think the shows that are coming, that will have to come in because of financial reasons, among many other things, I'm hopeful will be quite intelligent and smart and replace production values with good thought. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah.
I think it should be a bit of a morph, between the technology that we're discovering in this time and theater. I mean, Irish Rep's been doing a whole virtual season, and I was in there, Touch of the Poet, which was shot on the green screen, and we shot it in our homes, but there were scenes with 3 of us. One was in Berlin, one was in South Dakota shooting, and I was here. And we're in the same scene, and it's seamless. It's really, and they're actually going to be doing Meet Me in St. Louis for Christmas.
Wow.
And and everybody's shooting it in their own home with a green screen. The technology is pretty amazing.
Well, David, you were rehearsing that, right? Or
we were rehearsing
shut down.
Yeah. In fact, we were in the rehearsal room on Thursday, and we got the message that Broadway was shutting down, and we sort of still continued on it a little bit, and then they just realized we couldn't do this. But the thought was we would, come back in tech in April and open the show then. But Irish Rep really pivoted quickly, and they're doing a whole virtual season right now. Bill Irwin's got one actually at 3:00 today. If anybody is interested, he's got a one-man show about that. But that's incredible.
So, is it still streaming? Can we see your show still?
Well, they may do a pay-per-view thing with it possibly, but the agreement with the union is that it's just 8 performances on a given week. So it was like the end of October.
Yeah, well, for those of our viewers that don't know this, we are forging a way to do these shows virtually, and there was a bit of discussion with the Screen Actors Guild about whose jurisdiction this was, and we got some good news this week. At least they've settled their dispute, and we can continue. But it's a whole new world. I don't know if you guys knew that I did one just recently too. I did a virtual production of Les Blancs, the Lorraine Hansberry play, through Theater Emory. I got a call out of the blue. I never worked with these people before. It was a wonderful role and a very interesting project. we did it completely virtually. We didn't have the luxury of being able to rehearse with each other, at least before we filmed it. But me and one other of the cast members were the only ones in the New York area. Everybody else was either from Atlanta, someone was from Utah, and we had a very young actor who was in Kenya. And so when he would rehearse with us in the evening, it was 4 o'clock in the morning for him. So it was very unusual experience, I have to say. But they did a capture after we rehearsed for about a week, and then it was streaming last week. And while hardly perfect, it was quite remarkable what they were able to do. The backgrounds that they put up, and the music that they added, and sometimes. I don't know if you've had that experience, David, but at least you had rehearsed with the other actors. But I didn't know who I was talking to. I didn't know where are they. I didn't know where to focus. So
we would do it through Zoom. We would do when we were shooting. I'd have the camera, and then my iPad would be on Zoom, and that's where Kieran would be directing, and that's where you would hear the other actors, so you could get your cues and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's the way we work, but the icons were so small, and I didn't know where they were. I think you guys were obviously rehearsed, so you were off. But we were doing, they called it a reading. So actually, our script was scrolling in front of us, so you really couldn't pay attention to those other things. If you you might miss a cue or something. But so now, doing the couples thing. How many times, Ken, you were a performer in Phantom, and Andrew was the stage manager quite often. Right. So how's that work? I mean,
well, actually, we've also worked as director and performer in the same show. I've directed him in several shows.
And as performer and performer.
And also worked performer. So doing stage manager to performer was absolutely no problem whatsoever. I would just comment when I was calling the show. I'd be sitting at the calling desk just off stage right, and he would make his first exit after his first scene, and I'd always kind of comment on how I thought it went for him that night. If I gave him a little piece of candy, he knew that he gave a good show. If I did a thumbs down, he knew that he wasn't very good last night. Well, I commented a lot on his performance.
I don't know that things are that smooth when I work with Tony. Actually, this show goes very smoothly. As my for those of you who don't know, the producer of this show is my husband, Tony Javid, and we're always pleased with the results. But sometimes the road is a little bumpy along the way. We've written together, we've performed together, and but I think it's because we care so deeply, and we're very opinionated.
I think when we first worked together as a director and performer, I think we were both a little bit leery of how it would work, and I don't recall having any problems with that. Luckily enough, am I right?
I was going to say that as an actor, when you're working with the director for the first time, you're really sort of sizing each other up. And it requires a great deal of trust on the part of the actor to throw themselves into the hands of the director. Because an actor, no matter how skilled, can't be sitting out front and watching. And that extra pair of eyes out front, you really have to trust. And it took maybe an eighth of a rehearsal to determine that he knew his onions, and so there was never any question as to who was in charge and who could be trusted. I didn't always agree with him, but I must say that as the facts fell, I'm thinking of one particular show that I did. I was doing a production of Philemon, which is a lesser-known work of Tom Jones and Harvey Schmidt.
Yes.
And a very problematical one, very challenging show. And I was in rehearsal for it, and I thought I was doing so well. Oh, my God, it was going so beautifully. The material was very challenging, very difficult. and I couldn't wait for him to see it because I was so proud of what I had done. And he came to see it. Was it in preview before we opened?
No,
Open. He came to see it opening night and said it could conceivably have been the worst performance I've ever given. I was
being honest.
I was appalled. And later on in the run, of course, I didn't let it affect what I was doing on stage because he wasn't the director. Later on, they videotaped it for Lincoln Center. And I looked at the videotape, and he was 100% right. Totally right. It was a horrible performance that I gave. And that kind of experience makes you trust even more. Because to have the courage, given our offstage relationship, to throw your career into his judgment, that's something that has to be earned, and he more than often earned it. I didn't always like what I had to hear, but I do know that it was always honest and quite accurate. And
when we work together as director and performer, we never bring the work home. We never discuss the show outside of the rehearsal. Okay, we always keep the lives completely separate.
That's hard. That's really hard, especially now that we're all working at home. There's no separation.
Yeah.
So Tony's right on the other side of this door right now. So we may all get notes later, and justifiably so. It's not easy, and it's a tribute to your relationship as well and your professionalism. And all of us really, we've managed to navigate the river towards success that way. How about you guys, David and Carolyn? I've been in so many things with either one of you, or directed a show that you were in, but I'm trying to think. Did Carolyn? Did you come in at the last minute to substitute in Rumors when someone dropped out? So
this is a play.
It's only a play.
It's only
a play. That's what it was.
That was it. I came in as the taxi driver.
Yeah. I remember you playing a rather gruff, leather-clad. Andrew, this is just another aspect of Carolyn that you never would have imagined.
Put her in a leather jacket. Yeah.
Coming in under those circumstances is always such a challenge. It's so difficult. It's a full plate is thrown in your lap, and you have to make dinner out of it. It's very, very difficult, and it requires nerves of steel and an awful lot of trust. And I've done it a couple of times. Like in the Fantastics, everybody's a replacement. In Phantom of the Opera, everyone is a replacement. There isn't anybody from the original company there. And so there's a lot of compassion on the part of the cast of a long-running show when you come in as a replacement. But boy, when it's a show that's ending rehearsal and suddenly there you are, that is...
Yeah, it's like trying to catch a moving train. Yeah.
So that's what, and a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. I was an understudy. I covered Pseudolus, Senex and Miles. And the first time I went on, we were in previews before we opened. And we had no rehearsal. It was a company of covers, because you couldn't hide them anywhere in the show. So we were just a company of covers. And the first time I went on for Miles, I did it on very, very short notice. They didn't even have a costume for me. And it's your metaphor is quite accurate. There's this speeding train coming by. You extend your hand to grab onto the train, and either you're able to get onto the train or your arm is ripped out of your socket. And it's a terrorizing experience. Doubled, I think, if I'm right, that was the first night that Sondheim was seeing it all intact, and with the costumes and all the rest of that. And so it was a very, very nerve-wracking experience. But any replacement is tough. Yeah. Standing by at that show was particularly difficult because the comedy morphed from performance to performance. Things were directed, but there was a fluidity in the comedy that required constant attention on the part of the covers. And you always had the feeling when you were going to go on, you were going to ruin the chemistry. It was a tremendous amount of pressure. And so replacing under any circumstances, very, very hard.
But that's also the magic of why we are excited to do it live. And I appreciate your saying that the comedy would morph, because I think in a show like that it should, because there is a certain amount of give and take in that style of comedy. I felt that when I was doing the producers, because of the rigidity of the company, sometimes you were expected to do it exactly the way the person before you did, and that would sometimes make it a little static. And you know, if you didn't give in to the new personality, you would lose a laugh too. And so it's a trade-off. I understand why it was done that way, but it was frustrating as an actor to have to deal with that. And I remember, sorry,
rather than frustrating, I would say challenging.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to spoil, you don't want to upset the apple cart,
Exactly.
but you also want to bring your own energy and take what they're giving you in an honest way and throw the ball back. So I remember when I was covering Max in the producers, I never thought I would go on, because I was the skinniest Max Bialystock they had ever had. And I would dutifully go to my understudy rehearsal and think, I am never going to go on. And one day I got a call and they said, "You're on tonight." And going to your dressing room all alone, when you suddenly move to the star dressing room after you've been sharing with two other people, and your dresser doesn't even come in. They sit out in the hall. I thought, I'm all alone here. I don't, what the hell am I doing? And I got through the whole first act and half of the second, and because you never leave the stage in that role. And I breathed a sigh of relief. And then I thought, oh my God, I've got to do that big recap number now. And before I knew it, I was pushed on, and there it was. But it's very frightening and but invigorating and wonderful. And I think that was the best time I ever had going on in that role. So yeah, and you know, and the theater that we've all skirted around talking about is a place that's beloved to us all, because we've had so much work. I don't know that you've been there, Ken, but the rest of us have all been at Surflight Theater. And Steve Steiner was on the show a few weeks ago and talked about the remarkable way they got through this year, and you know, plans for next year. They're rising again like a phoenix for the 14th time. But I have to say, you guys were old hands working there before I did, and I was in a little bit of a state of shock when I realized how short the rehearsal period was. I was spoiled because I got my equity card when I was 11 years old in the Broadway show. So I didn't do the 1 week stock, but I found out that in this business, sooner or later, you're going to have to pay your dues that way. And when I did 3 plays in 3 weeks down there, I think, David, you were involved with one of them there. By the time we got to the 3rd play, I had no idea what was going on. And you were letter perfect in your role. I think it was Dial M for Murder you were doing. Yeah. I think you bailed me out several times during that performance.
Yeah. Yes, bailing people out, you know. Because you're going to need it sometime too.
Yeah. You know, but it was. I think we love it so much because you get to play all these roles in a short period of time. Carolyn, I'm remembering the season where we did Man Who Came to Dinner and The Odd Couple.
Yes.
Back to back. And I was Sheridan Whiteside, and then Felix Unger. And you were Mrs.
I don't even remember what her name was now,
Well,
but anyway, the lady of the house.
Yes,
Mr.
but
Stanley.
you had an accident. Tell us about what happened.
Well, we had just finished dress rehearsal, and it was probably getting on close to midnight, and I was cold. So I went into the actor house, which is right next door. You go out the door and up some steps and got a sweater, came back out, and in the dark, hadn't noticed that there was a missing brick in the sidewalk, and it was right at the point where you pivot to make a turn to the left. My foot went in, my body turned, my foot didn't, and it broke my ankle.
Oh my God.
Yep, and then I crawled because I heard the snaps. I knew it wasn't good. I crawled and banged on the stage door. They took me to the ER, and the next morning went to get a cast. Meanwhile, and I had all this blocking running up and down the stairs, and the lady of the house moving around. She's the first person on the set at the beginning, top of the show, So while I'm getting a cast, the rest of the cast is rehearsing me not ever going up a stair. They took one of the cast members and made him the butler, who always was next to me. I'd never been on crutches before in my life. And I did the show. I did the show with a truly broken ankle with Whiteside who was pretending.
Well, and I was the one in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
So
I know.
it would
And
have worked
everybody
out a little
thought that
better.
was part of the show. They thought we'd fallen together.
But then the following, 2 weeks later, we were doing The Odd Couple, and you were one of the Pigeon Sisters.
Right?
And we sort of wrote it into the script.
Yeah.
Apologies to Neil Simon. We had
You changed one line.
Yes. Well, the fellow playing opposite me loved it. Walt Willey, who had done several. He spent, I think, at least a decade on a soap opera. One of the leads on a soap opera, playing Susan Lucci's husband, her last husband. I think she had about 18. But so he was used to TV and not what we were doing there, 1 week stock. And but I think he reveled in it. He was dying to make some sort of ad lib every time you hopped onto the stage on your crutches. So it was quite a double date for Felix and Oscar. I think had we all gone through with that. But you never missed a beat. It was remarkable. And
it was fun. You put in this line because I had on a mini skirt, and then we had the flower power all over the cast. It was actually really kind of cool. But you added the line, but she's got a broken leg, and he said, and Felix answered, the rest of her works fine. You don't remember that?
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. You gave Walt an opening. And he took it.
I do remember that there was a rug on the set. The set looked great, but we had an oriental rug on the set that had been used many, many times down at Surflight, and I don't think it had ever been cleaned. And so it was a great motivation for me as Felix to just see that rug all the time, and with the potato chips flying and the crumbs, and Walt actually ate a pickle that flew off the table and onto that rug. And I didn't have to act. I just saw that pickle. It would probably had a wayward hair or some a dust bunny sticking on it, and he ate it. It was no issue. I remember you telling me, oh yeah, that was on the set of Blithe Spirit here. You had seen that rug many times. So yeah. It's probably still down there. When we go back next season, we'll find it somewhere. And so, recently we haven't worked together in a couple of years. The last time I saw you guys, you came down to see the Neil Simon show that I just did. Alzheimer's. Making a joke about Alzheimer's. Terrible. The Sunshine Boys. I was playing one of the old guys in Yeah, and we were just discussing what was going to happen next. And David, you were telling me you were going to do Touch of the Poet, and the world went upside down. But we're still here, and I remember thinking that I have to keep calling Carl, who was the actor who played opposite me, because we had that scene where I spit in his face constantly. And I thought, oh, no. You know, are you okay? For about a month afterwards. So Ken, are you on I mean, well, we're all on hiatus, but are you going back to Phantom, or are you?
Well, the timing of of what's going on actually was quite, in a twisted way, fortuitous. I've been with Phantom for 15 years, which is about 9 years longer than I really thought that I would ever stay with any one show. And it just is a very, very comfortable thing to wake up in the morning and know where you're going, and, you know, but it was time to go. And so I handed in my notice. I was going to retire, and not more than a month and a half later, the show retired. So I'm not part of the company anymore. It doesn't mean that I don't want to work anymore, but right. I intended to retire. I retired to, not really retire, but to start collecting my pension. And it seemed that Broadway simply couldn't do without me.
Yeah, it says so. So you're the one. You did.
I'm the one. No, there's a full company of people there who are anxiously holding their breath to come back to work.
Sure.
It's been very, very tough for them because they don't have the cushion of a pension, which, Lord knows, the Actors Equity Pension, God bless it, is extraordinary. And they're really having a hard time of it. And I'm sure they're all incredibly anxious to get back into harness again. But I've left Phantom with the intention of not going back to Phantom. And we'll see what the future holds. But yeah. I'm not on hiatus from Phantom. I'm Phantom emeritus.
Yeah.
Great way of putting it. But I'm sure with all the Broadway shows you have done over the years, I mean, the list is huge. You know, you did what, Forum, and all the revivals of MAME and Guys and Dolls.
The revival of
you know, but you've amassed a nice pension.
I've been very, very fortunate. Talent towards one side, you have to be so lucky, and I really have been.
Well,
and, just to keep things honest here, sandwiched in between all that Broadway stuff was Paper Mill and you know, Chateau de Ville, if anyone remembers Chateau de Ville.
I do.
The Arian Dinner Theater, and on and on and on. It's just the kind of, those are really the meat and potatoes of working. Broadway is like every once in a while they'll put a little cherry on your sundae. Yeah. But the bulk of the work is slugging it out in the regionals and in stock.
Yeah, the first 10 years of our relationship, we actually didn't see much of each other because he was always off working someplace.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Well, that can actually be an advantage.
It actually was good, yeah.
Well, the thing is, we always came back to each other with a great deal of enthusiasm to be able to share what we had not been able to share over time that we were separated.
But something that we did learn, though, as far as a couple, the person who stays home has the harder job because you're keeping everything together. You know, the person who goes off to do a regional or a tour, their only responsibility is
doing the job.
Yeah. If somebody makes your bed, somebody cleans up your room.
The person who stays home has to keep life going and do everything else as well.
It's very tough. The one who stays behind has a much, much harder job.
And I think the emotional issue that goes along with it, when you're on tour, the only thing that you associate with that town and is the cast and the play, and so you're not missing the other presence in that space. Right. So it's kind of a weird feeling. I know that when I've been away, I wasn't so homesick until Tony came for a visit. And then when he went home, I started counting the days until it was time for me to go home. You know, I had missed his presence in where we were. You know, it was an odd sort of thing that I never expected. But Carolyn, you guys have worked together more often than that one time, right? I mean,
A few times.
Yeah, I think we've done about 15 or 16 plays together now since we've been married.
that's a lot.
Yeah, but Carolyn was more musical, I was more straight, and then she started doing more straight, and I started doing more musical, so the overlap kind of happened there. But I totally want to, you know, also agree with, the person at home's got the harder job. I mean, that's, like you say, you're on the road or you're out of town and you pretty much get yourself to take care of. There's that home person that, you know, because they're looking for the next job too, which is, you know, that's our job as an actor, is finding that next job. And even though one of us is away, you know, someone's got to be here and keep home.
Pay the bills and all that kind of, you know, the day.
Oh, yeah. And there's times when we're both out of town, you know, and it's kind of like who handles the responsibility of the household. You know.
And the pets?
We don't have any. We backyard cats, yeah.
Well, we used to have a pet, and she's the one who writes our Christmas letter, as all of you are very aware, but she writes it as Princess Past now. But yes, we do live in a neighborhood, which is nice, so we can watch one another's homes and help to take care, which is good.
Yeah. We bought our house in Jersey City here back in '93. You know, so it's like Gene says in Side Man: if you keep your nuts small, you get to play your horn. And
which you have another one too.
What?
I have an old.
Well, I live in an old house. I drive an old car and have an old wife. Yeah.
And that's how he affords being able to do theater.
Because, like you said, theater.
You know, it's actually remarkable, because a lot of I think more often than not, when you have two people in the theater who met while they're both working in the theater, gradually one drifts out of necessity. And I think it's a tribute to the tenacity of both of you couples, and I guess us too, that we've managed to still follow the path that we set out. And you know, you have to roll with the punches, so to speak. Andrew, you I know were a performer before you were a director. Have you dallied any more recently with that, or are you just?
No, not recently. There was a period of time that I was directing and performing. You know, I was doing half and half. But eventually I just found that directing suits me better. I like it better. I get more satisfaction from the directing than I ever did from the performing. But I think, having been a performer, I'm sure you know this, David, from being a performer, you're a better director because you were a performer. You know how to talk to an actor.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's like what Ken was saying before. You have to trust the director and leave your director's eye out in the hall when you're acting again too, because I've worked with some actors who are also directors who are always directing themselves, and it becomes a self-conscious performance, and it sometimes undermines the trust in the director. And that's what I've always said. You know, Carolyn, when we were doing Last the Red Hot Lovers, I feel like and I'm sure, Andrew, you'll agree with this, it's about that trust that you're talking about with an actor. And you can get an actor to go really far out on the diving board and take a risk if they trust you. But that trust has to be established very early on in the process. And if it's not, you have a bumpy road. And you know, I always feel that that's my biggest job on those first few days of rehearsal, to make sure that the actors trust, because then the progress is limitless, you know, in terms of what you're going to do. And Carolyn, I'll tell you, that moment that you were describing in Last the Red Hot Lovers, you went with it. You you looked at me and said, all right, well, am I going to trust this guy? And you did. And we went pretty darn far on 9 hours of rehearsal.
It's especially hard, David. It's especially hard. What we're talking about here, to gain that trust when your cast is pre-cast without you, because during the audition process, you can get an actor to trust you during the audition process, giving them a nice piece of direction, and then they'll go, oh, you know what, I want to work with that guy. But if your show is pre-cast, then you've got, it's an uphill battle.
Sure. And I think that's something that we miss in this era now, that a lot of even before the pandemic, there were a lot of virtual auditions. People send in tapes, and I just find it very frustrating, because if I'm the actor that doesn't get any feedback or an adjustment that you could easily, show that you had a rapport with it, and vice versa. You can't. I had an incident a couple of years ago where we cast an actress from her marvelous audition tape, and then it broke down because she asked for too much money. So luckily, the producer said, "No, we have to pass on this," and we ended up with someone better. And but that was a happy accident, because I think had we been in the rehearsal room, we would have found out that this other actor who we liked so much on video was maybe not as much a team player as we thought, and that would have been difficult. So we kind of dodged a bullet that way. But and I know you guys as actors must be facing the same issues. I do not enjoy sending in tapes for theater projects. I like to be in the room with someone, but we have to make friends with it. And I think this time period where we're doing shows like this and virtual auditions, we're developing that skill. And I know for me, I'm getting rid of a lot of the fear attached to it. So that's a good thing, because that's the way. If nothing else, it saves you $2.50 on the subway to have to go downtown to audition.
$2.50?
Well, I don't know. I don't know anymore, David. I honestly don't.
In 1973, I did, I guess, what would be the equivalent of an early virtual audition. I was auditioning for the Utah Shakespeare Festival, and they wanted me to send in an audio tape of myself doing a monologue, a Shakespeare monologue, which I recorded. And having worked at a radio station, I played back the tape and felt that it was a little, shall we say, flabby. And being adept at editing, I applied my skills to the tape, finished doing my correction on the tape, played it back, and realized I had eliminated every time I breathed. And it sounded as if I did the entire monologue in one breath. Had to go back and start all over again. You can't cheat those virtual auditions.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do it.
That's
I'd
wonderful.
like to tell a story a little on Andrew, the first time he actually met me. Do you remember you were there? They were doing Carousel, and I had come in. Carousel was running, and Steve had introduced you as the director for 110 The Shade, that I was Lizzie. And I had spent a lot of time already with the play, the music. I had some very strong opinions. I love the stage play. So I walk up, this very energetic woman, I walk up to poor Andrew and I say, oh, great, I hope you take and put it back in the house where it belongs. And if you need to cut, because Lizzie has so many songs, if you need to cut Love Turn Away, it's so Oklahoma to me. You know, you can cut that, but there's another song I have in mind that would be great for File. He's so underwritten. This whole litany.
This energy came at me.
Out of my mouth. And I remember your face. You looked, because you had never met me, not auditioned me or anything, and this woman's just piling all this on you. Your eyes got really big, and you kind of did this moment of, shh. I promise I will not cut Love Turn Away. I will make it work for you. I was like, oh, okay. And I realized I'd crossed a line a couple of times. And then,
Line, a highway.
well, I can be in a opinionated actor.
I recognize that, lady, but I also recognize that eventually you are game for anything the director.
Oh no, I am. And in a couple of days, Andrew came around and he did a lovely staging for Love Don't Turn Away.
You came around, huh, Andrew? It was you that had to come around.
Yeah. I did it all. Yeah, I did it all.
He came to visit me, and he said, in the space I was staying at, he said, "I'd love to hear what that song is you were talking about." And I realized in those couple of days of just working together, plus Andrew, I did take a sneak peek at your book. This was one of those rehearsals where people were so well cast across the board that for the most part, Andrew let us go. And it actually, he had all this blocking in there for us. He had thought the show through. I remember seeing it and going, oh, wow, he hasn't interrupted us at all. Of course, then when we did I Do, I mean, I got a lot of direction for that one. And so, it depended on the show and what was going on. But that getting to know one another was really important. And yet I felt free to express the things I thought, would help with the show for me anyway. And we had a great experience. It was really
one of the ways that I work as a director, I always go into the show absolutely prepared. Even to the point where I have everything blocked. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen once we get into rehearsal. But I don't want to go into rehearsal not having a game plan. I want the actors to know that I have something in mind. It can change. It can change completely. But at least I know where I want to be headed. I don't want the actors to look at me and go, so what do I do now? And me to go, I don't know. What do you want to do?
I would like to inject one thing here. Andrew and I have done Fiddler on the Roof a number of times together. And in one of the subsequent productions of it, I know that he's very particular about one particular line of the show that another character says, not me. And watching him finesse the actor into doing it precisely the way Andrew wants it done is a beautiful thing to watch. Because he never gives a line reading, he never makes anything specific. He just says, keep hunting, I think you'll find it. And with his patience and subtlety is an incredible thing to watch when he's working with other actors. Because you will get, if you have something specific in mind that you want, you'll get it, but you'll make it seem as if the actor has come up with it. So they will own that moment and that choice. And it isn't something that was pasted on top of him, but was nevertheless found in concert. And it becomes all the more authentic to the actor saying the line.
I agree. It's not giving the man the fish, but teaching the man to fish, so to speak. I agree. We're actually, I don't want to interrupt this because we've got more time on the show, but we have hit the point where we do our little intermission. And I would like to pose our quiz question. I'm sure that at least two of you, probably three, and maybe four, will have very good answers to this question. We were talking the other day about roles in Broadway musicals that have won Tony Awards for the actors that play them, and in revivals as well. There's several instances. So I'm challenging you to come up with some answers of what these roles were, where multiple actors have won Tony Awards for this same role. And there's a few that I didn't think of right away, but and there's a couple that are very obvious. So we're going to give this to our audience to think about. And during the time that they're thinking about, I told Andrew that I had a little surprise. I went deep dark into my archives and found a rather rough audio of our production of 1776. So here is about a 2 or 3 minute excerpt of, there's no videos, just audio. So this is your intermission. You can choose to leave your chair and have a bathroom break. But if you are compelled to listen, here it is. It's a moment of me as John Adams in the Andrew Glant-Linden production of 1776 from Surflight Theater from I don't know how many years ago, but quite a few now, more than we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
So think about your answers to the quiz question, and we'll be right back. Is anybody there? Does anybody care? Does anybody see what I see? They want me to quit. They say, John, give up the fight. Still, to England I say, good night forever, good night. For I have crossed the Rubicon, let the bridge be burned behind me. Come what may, commitment, the products of say will rule today. They'll be held to pay in fire eternatory. Through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. Is anybody there? Does anybody care? Does anybody see what I see? I see fireworks. I hear the pageant of trumpet parade. I hear the bells ringing out. I hear the cannons roar. I see Americans, all Americans free forevermore. How quiet the chamber is. How silent the chamber is. Is anybody there? Does anybody care? Does anybody see what I see?
Wow. Wow, that was wonderful. Great performance.
Well, you know, I hate listening to myself. I can't listen to that.
You sound great, Dave.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
But it was, you know, I'm very proud that when I've gone back to that theater, so many of the people say that was their favorite show that they ever saw at Surflight Theater, and you should know that. So we should be very pleased that we had that kind of reaction.
Yeah, we had a great time. I thought you were terrific in the show. I thought so many in the cast it was a really good show. You know,
well, you were a joy to work with, and you managed, as Ken was describing, with actors at all levels of experience and training. You were able to get performances out of them that were above and beyond what we could have expected. So,
thank you.
You know, we had a lot of local,
Yeah, we did.
Beach Haven talent and in small roles. But it really came together quite remarkably well. And I was very pleased with it. So we didn't get any answers. I think we finally stumped our public this week. We had a lady that almost every week got all the answers, and but we didn't get any this week. So it's the forum is open. What answers can you guys offer to this?
The first one that I came up with was the role of Pseudolus in Forum. Zero Mostel, Phil Silvers, and Nathan Lane. All three of them won for that role. That's the first one that I came up with.
That's great. It's one that actually it didn't come to me at first. Carolyn, do you know any?
Well, I don't know that I know, but I would suspect Adelaide in Guys and Dolls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think did Vivian Blaine win for that?
I can't believe she didn't. It's possible.
I'm not
I honestly don't know. It's a role that should have.
Well, it's a good guess.
Don Quixote.
No.
Really?
Nope.
Oh my God.
Well,
Did
here's
he not win?
well here's he did, but nobody won in a revival.
Revival.
That's yeah. The one that's so obvious to me because it was nominated every time was Rose in Gypsy.
Yes, that's the other one that we came up with. Yes, Rose.
But the originator, Ethel Merman, did not win, and neither did Bernadette Peters.
Right.
But Patti LuPone, Tyne Daly, and Angela Lansbury all won for that. There's another triple crown in women's roles that I hadn't thought of initially.
Incidentally, I just checked it in the book. Yes, Adelaide is a multiple.
Good.
Good.
You got it.
One and Faith Prince did. But it occurred to me while we've been chatting that there's another one.
What?
Anna in the
Yes, that's the one I was.
Lawrence won, and Kelly O'Hara won.
Yes, and Donna Murphy. Yes, all three of them. Yeah.
Did we have another?
We had Dolly Levi,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Carol Channing, and Bette Midler.
Yeah.
And Bette Midler. There's a male role in another classic, and it's a show that you've directed, and Carolyn, you've been in.
Oh, MC in Cabaret.
Cabaret.
Right.
And interestingly enough, Joel Grey won in the supporting category, and Alan Cumming won in the leading category. And there's another leading lady, a personal favorite of mine, Desiree in A Little Night Music.
Oh, I just thought of another one.
Johns and
Glynis Johns and Catherine Zeta-Jones both won. And there's one that's really hard to get. It's a supporting female role. I'm proud of this one. In Promises, Promises,
Oh, Marilyn.
Marge McDougall. Marion Mercer won for the original, and Katie Finneran for the revival. And what's remarkable, I did that show in stock years ago, and that character is actually in only 2 scenes in the entire play. But it's a great way to make an impression in that. There are probably others that we haven't, when our show is streaming on my page, people will come up with other answers. So over the next couple of weeks, we might find out ones we missed. But
Annie, Get Your Gun.
Well, I was just thinking about that, but Annie Get Your Gun was 1946, and that was before the Tonys.
Before Tonys, yes.
Yes. Which opens up an interesting avenue of discussion, because prior to the Tony Awards, you had the Donaldson Awards, which were, in essence, the Tony Awards. And if you include that, it opens up a whole lot of other parts. Bigelow and Carousel, Annie. It would be very interesting to go back to take a look at some of the past winners of the Donaldson Awards and see how they overlap in the future once the Tonys took over.
Yeah, I could be wrong about this, but I think they were still around during maybe the first or second year, so you could actually have won both.
There was a short overlap, but the theater wing wanted to establish its own award, and they wanted also to perpetuate the memory of Antoinette Perry, and so that's how the Tony Awards came in.
And that's what we want to perpetuate here on Beyond the Green Room, the legacy of the history of the theater that we don't
you've got
enough about. So
you've got the master right there, my goodness.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm a little preoccupied with that sort of thing.
Well, I drive people crazy with the amount of recordings that I have. I'm using my spare time during this pandemic to organize them a bit, because I have digitized so many of them, and so many of my recordings I will listen to once and then put on the shelf, but I still have to burn them onto a CD.
Right.
That's how old-fashioned I am. I have to hold it. I miss not having that LP and that first day that you could put your finger through the shrink wrap and open your gift. And I mean, just my education at one point in my life as a teenager consisted of looking up all the words that I didn't understand on the liner notes of cast albums. And it improved my vocabulary, such as it is, and that's a good thing if you have a passion for something like that. But unfortunately, a lot of modern musicals, we don't get much vocabulary or much wit and rhyme in the lyrics. Excuse me to all of you who think otherwise, but
when I was very young, of course, I paid terribly close attention to all of this. It seemed as if the world were smaller then, and it was a lot easier to study things intently. And I can't begin to tell you what my little 8-year-old brain was making of Eliza Doolittle and Wouldn't It Be Loverly, because I had never heard of a Cockney accent, and there were so many words she was saying I'd never heard of before. The dialect, kiddo, didn't know.
Yeah, well, and also the words that I assumed were part of the English language that weren't. Lyricists like Ira Gershwin and E.Y. Harburg would write made-up words.
Yes.
And I only found out last week that actually Flahooly was not made up by E.Y. Harburg. It did exist. It was rather obscure, but it did exist. We had Steve Cole and Peter Felicia on last week, and the font of information that we have on musical theater history rivals you guys and myself on their dissertation last week. So
speaking of Flahooly, and how often do we actually speak of Flahooly?
Not enough.
My Fair Lady was originally projected to have a name not unlike Flahooly.
What was it?
Fanfaroon.
Yeah, can you imagine
Frederick Lowe
on a marquee?
really wanted it to be called Fanfaroon. And I think it was eventually nixed because it sounded too much like Brigadoon, the earliest show of the two of them. But there's a famous story about while they were still in rehearsal, the producer, they were constantly arguing about what the title should be. They were talking about it being My Lady Liza, but they didn't like the idea of Rex Harrison and My Lady Liza. They thought that was sort of skirting some rather dirty issues.
Yeah.
So they kept going back and forth about titles. And this day, Herman Levin showed up with the mock-up of the full-page Times ad that was going to announce their new show coming to Broadway. And it had all of the billing and everything else. And what the title was, there was a big question mark. And he said, no one's leaving this room until we have a title. And they finally decided on My Fair Lady because it was the one title that people hated the least.
Well, last week with Peter and Steve Cole, we discussed that the Galt McDermott show that opened the Uris Theater and how the name changed. It was, when it opened, it was called Via Galactica.
Right.
But the original name was going to be Up, because the actors were on trampolines and they were anti-gravity. It took place in outer space. But when they looked at the marquee of the Uris Theater, which is now the Gershwin, thank you, it was the name of the theater was below, and it literally would have said Up Uris. So, it was a good idea. It didn't help make the show run any longer, but and it makes for a great theatrical anecdote all these years later.
Yeah.
So now we're kind of coming to the end of our time together, and this is a scary question because none of us really know. But are you Ken, you're enjoying your retirement and would have been anyway. But Andrew, are you working on any projects that are hopefully will come back very soon?
I've been working with this playwright on 2 shows, one straight play and one musical that she's sort of in the midst of writing. We kind of did a workshop of one of the straight play about 2 years ago. We did a workshop reading of it, but it still needs a lot of work. The musical also still needs a lot of work. So we're in the process, but it's gonna be a long period of still working on it before it even gets any sort of production. So that's where I am right now with that.
Good. But hopefully our beloved Surflight will be back next year, and maybe we'll get a shot to be there together. And what about you, Carolyn? You're always being ambitious about something. So even just dreaming about a role that.
That's true. Well, I have been working on some new music, but I would love to do Dear World. Oh my God, I've been working on the Dear World material. The music is so wonderful in that show. And I actually did do Mad Woman Ashaya last spring. I played the one who heard voices. Gabriella. But is it Tuesday? David and I are both working this way on a adaptation of Mrs. Dalloway. And it's now being called Clarissa Buys Some Flowers. Mm-hmm. And actually there's some wonderful roles in that. And I love the part I'm playing. I'm not playing the lead, but it is a woman who is, it deals with a little bit of gender issues going on in a very repressed time. And I'm very much enjoying it, actually. Good. And I'm playing Joyman, which is fun.
And David, your production of Touch of the Poet is possibly going to be streaming.
Yeah, Kieran, they still want to put it back. The sets are built, the costumes, everything else. So they hoping that they can put it back into the season when they do it. I actually had work lined up through February when all this hit. So I'm hoping some of those shows will still come back. One was, I did a one-man show on Tim O'Brien's book, The Things They Carry. And I've been pitching that to theaters. And, this one-man shows are going to be kind of a thing right now.
Absolutely.
And but no bites on that yet. But people are like, well, who knows what's going to happen next? So.
Yeah. I think in this virtual atmosphere, a one-man show is very enticing to people. And if you've got it put together, keep on plugging, because I envy that.
It's a great show.
I had 3 jobs lined up, bing, bang, boom, that all fell like a house of cards right when this came. And I think one of them may come back. I've been promised that it will sometime. But it was interesting. You mentioned that, Carolyn, you started mostly doing musicals when you first worked together, and then you've done an awful lot of Death of a Salesman recently, and David, that tap dancing lesson that we had, I know you may not do Billy Bigelow right now or Don Quixote, but you've played an awful lot of choice character roles in musicals.
Yeah.
You've expanded your resume over the years too. You've kind of flip-flopped there. I know, Carolyn, when you start out a career and you can sing, you get typed. And these last few years, I've been doing mostly straight plays. And I was looking forward to going back to a couple of musicals. I was going to go to the land of Sondheim and with putting it together and do another Don Quixote. And that all failed. So I have to remember to vocalize, because who knows when we will come back and sing again. This forum is very difficult to do musicals in, but straight plays are as we found out, not impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would actually be in rehearsals right now for my 8th Scrooge down in North Carolina, but hopefully that'll be back next year.
Yeah, between the two of us, I think we've done Scrooge more times than just about anybody. I did it about 4 times at Westchester in different incarnations, and yeah, I guess I'll miss it a little bit, but it's a great role no matter what.
Oh, I love it.
No matter the adaptation you do. We did a country and western version of it out at Westchester one year, and one that was all a jukebox musical set in an American version, Sleepy Hollow, and several other musical versions. And gosh, yeah, but it'll come back too.
Yeah.
And there's great plays. David and I, we're getting close to being able to do Gin Game.
You know what?
So we can't
do it now while we can still remember the lines. That's the thing. When we did, you guys saw the Sunshine Boys, and when I was working with Carl, I said, we're much too young to play these parts. And he said, really? He said, I looked back and I saw the ages that the 2 original cast members and their replacements were when they did it on Broadway. Yeah. So, I always say that people in the theater age differently than people. We're all so youthful, this group here. We're all.
You have to have enough youth to have the energy to perform that role over and over again, and yet be a good actor and play the ages.
Yeah. And it's also, people have memory issues and things like that. But we're not going to have that problem. That's why we have to keep up our chops while we're on pandemic vacation here. But it's one of the ironies of working in the theater. Perhaps your chops as an actor are only expanding, and what you have to offer is richer. But it gets harder to get your knees to bend to get back on that stage and remember all those lines. Well, it's really been a wonderful hour and a half spending it with you guys. And
flew by.
It really did.
It really flew right by.
You have so much richness to share. Ken, I'm so glad you joined us, because I feel like I know you now, even though we never really met. You have a font of experience on Broadway, and I'll say it again. It's a tribute to all of our relationships that in fact, why don't we just get Tony to pop in and say hi?
Yes.
So I can have my other half pay attention a little bit to our there he is.
Hey.
It looks like Tony is the associate producer of Piano Bar Live that you can see on Facebook every Tuesday night, which is a showcase for cabaret artists. And it's been going longer than this show. And our show here is about our 15th or 16th episode.
16th show. Yep, 16. Sweet 16. Thank you for making it sweet.
Approaching, I think when we hit our 200th guest, which will happen in a few weeks, you go through the turnstile and you get a prize. There's a balloon drop.
The sirens will go off and everything. Yeah.
Well, I would love to have you guys back.
We'd love to come back. Yes.
And even more, I'm hoping to see you live and in person, and to work with you again very, very soon.
That'd be wonderful, David.
All right. Well, stay well and stay safe. My guests next week will be Carolyn Casiopo and Robert Casiopo, who are both longtime theater professionals who have recently started their own theater in Florida. I think it's the 3rd or 4th theater that Bob Casiopo has started. It's the Players Circle Theater in Fort Myers, and they're enduring through this difficult time, and we want to hear all about that and their plans for the future, and we want to reminisce about our working together in the past. I've done a lot of work with them. And then the wonderful cabaret and theater artist Philip Chafin, who any musical theater collector of recordings will hear his glorious voice on studio cast albums and a wonderful solo very unique solo album that he released last year that we're going to talk about. So they will be joining us next week from points south and points east and west, and so we're looking forward to that. Now, Carolyn, the play out music is something, it's a tribute to you, because this is something that's kind of interesting. When we first got to know each other, you mentioned that you had done a show off-Broadway, a rather obscure musical, certainly in this country, but one that is revered in the UK. In fact, it has no less than 3 or 4 cast recordings. And you were in the American premiere of this. And when I found that out, I said, well, we would have met earlier because I was cast in it, but I didn't. I think I had it was one of those contracts where they paid 2 cents a week and ran about the.
It was a showcase and then moved off Broadway.
Well, and I missed it because old mercenary me, I took a job that was actually at a Lort Theater instead of whatever reason. But there are no wrong decisions. We always. But all I'm saying is we would have met even earlier had I done that with you.
Nick Corden was in that production. That's how I know Nick so well.
Yeah, well, there you have it, and he's our neighbor downstairs. So anyway, here's a little excerpt which, when I played it the other day, it kind of echoes the sentiment that we all feel right now, and has a little reference to the holidays coming up. So it gave me a little lump in my throat, and but something to look forward to. And we'll see you all. We'll see you when we see you, but the audience, I will see you next week on Beyond the Green Room. Thank you all for tuning in. Oh, this is the hired man. Sorry, I didn't tell you. A hired man, yes.
There we go.
I'll be home before the winter's out. You'll not spend Christmas